I failed. I was only able to reach one of the targets.
No worries. The mission was a success.
I don't get it.
How did your arm feel, Jeff? A little sore?
Am I gonna get sick?
Do you know why you were selected? Because of your genetic markers. You're what scientists call an elite controller.
Elite controller?
Some elite controllers contract HIV, but never develop AIDS. Others are immune to Ebola. Your genetic markers ensure that you will never contract any strain of avian flu.
This is why you selected me for this mission.
That and the survival skills you demonstrated in prison.
Why'd kill that doctor and nurse?
Sometimes you have to throw out a few rotten apples to save the lot.
How many apples? And who gets to decide who stays and who goes? You?
After the news broke of a deadly outbreak, the CDC recommended everyone get tested so the government could identify those who need to be vaccinated by evaluating their genetic markers.
Next.
You're collecting everyone's DNA.
After 9/11, people were more than willing to allow the NSA to collect all of their personal data, as long as it kept them safe. And now everyone will be safe from another threat. Only this time, it will be disease instead of terrorism.
What do you plan to do with all this data?
We're going to ensure that everyone has the same opportunity as you, Jeff. The opportunity to live up to their full potential. It's a simple calculation. Once everyone's DNA is stored in the National Healthcare Database, then they just need to be sorted.
Sorted? In order to accomplish what?
To get us through the next great filter, of course.
And what filter is that?
Our own savage history.
Kahala Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai Ba'Shem Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Salutations to the hopeful elect. Shalawam, Yasharala. Are you sure you want to be tested? This is Psalms chapter 64, verse 6. Really, the point is in the 8th verse. And it reads, "They search out iniquities. They accomplish a diligent search. Both the inward thought of every one of them and the heart is deep." This speaks to how well thought out and the length Esau will go to ensnare Jake. Never mind to feed his need to know, pursuant to Ezekiel 28:3. "Behold, thou art wiser than Daniel," speaking of the prince of Tyrus, Tyre being the spiritual name for Esau, Edom. "There is no secret that they can hide from thee." Indicative of Esau's ability to search things out diligently, letting nothing stand in his way, on top of the fact he has the resources to excavate, solicit and perform archaeological digs, go on expeditions, etc., to acquire his desire to know what is not privy to us so-called common folk. He has access to information and articles of fact that will never be released to the common public. The Hebrew for iniquities in Psalm 64:6 finds its root in a word that means to distort and deal unjustly. We know iniquity to mean wickedness, so Esau lets nothing stand in his way and will go to the depths of the sea to search out wickedness that he uses to distort what is considered in righteousness with Yahweh, to deal with others, primarily you Israelites, unjustly. And unjustly is putting it kindly. Psalm 64:7, "But Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai shall shoot at them with an arrow. Suddenly shall they be wounded." The soon-to-be suddenly wounded is in reference to the wicked elite of Esau. The arrow speaks to the idea of the thermonuclear and ballistic missiles, as well as the lasers from the chariots, piercing the beast and its system on the final day of Yahweh's judgment. 2 Ezra 16:13 says this, "For strong is his right hand that bendeth the bow, his arrows that he shooteth are sharp, and shall not miss when they begin to be shot into the ends of the world." This is how we know the arrows often referred to in the scriptures is speaking of guided missiles, as no arrow ever shot, no matter the reputation of the archer, was ever reported to reach from one end of the earth to the next. But Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai shall shoot at them with an arrow. All it takes is America's enemies to gather up enough ingenuity, courage, and enough hate to shoot the first one. The arrow, singular, is also in reference to Yahweh Shai. Through him, we, the hopeful elect, teach this truth, and the truth about Esau's plans for a new world order. This truth going out is the arrow that wounds Esau and the so-called white establishment in its evil endeavors. Isaiah 49:2 says this, "And he hath made my mouth like a sharp sword, and in the shadow of his hand hath he hid me, and made me a polished shaft. In his quiver hath he hid me." Quiver is a container that holds arrows. That quiver is the prophets of the Lord. The arrows are the men of the Lord on the highways and hedges, doing these sit-downs in sincerity and truth. Verse 8, and without further ado, here's the point. "So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away." Now that opening clip was from the TV show Point of Interest, Season 5, Episode 8, entitled Reassortment, aired on May 24th, 2016. Some say this episode is ahead of its time. Others call it predictive programming, pointing to our current situation. I call it the elite telling on themselves and then hiding in plain sight because, as I've come to understand, they consider it to be the gentlemanly thing to do. Instinctively, when I saw this, I thought, this was their plan all along, to covertly acquire our DNA and add it to their database for whatever nefarious reason. Then I started to look into it and found this article. ODNI warns China's collection of U.S. healthcare data, DNA, pose serious risks to economic and national security. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, is warning of China's collection of healthcare data and DNA of Americans, warning that the efforts pose serious risks to the privacy of Americans and to U.S. economic and national security. The National Counterintelligence and Security Center within ODNI this week warned that the People's Republic of China has collected large healthcare data sets from the U.S. and nations around the globe through both legal and illegal means. The NCSC warned that China is prioritizing the collection of healthcare data, including genomic data, which it says the country views as a strategic commodity to be collected and used for its economic and national security priorities. NCSC defined genomic data as a broad term referring to your entire genetic sequence, all your DNA. You can call it being paranoid all you like, but I come from a place where you never leave your DNA, never mind your fingerprints, readily accessible for anybody, because weirder things have happened than being framed, set up, or becoming somebody's daddy unbeknownst to you. Case in point. In fact, yet another reason not to send your DNA off to Yahweh knows where to find out what tribe or clan you come from. They really can't tell you. I don't care what Oprah or Gail says. The collection efforts come as part of China's efforts to advance its artificial intelligence and precision medicine industries. Now listen to this. In 2016, the same year as this episode aired, the People's Republic of China announced a $9 billion 15-year project to collect, analyze, and sequence genomic data to become a global leader in precision medicine, which ODNI describes as a process designed to provide tailored treatments based on the genetic makeup and environment and lifestyle of individual patients. During the CV-19 pandemic, intelligence officials pointed to China's efforts to market its CV-19 testing kits around the world, as well as laboratories to support its CV-19 testing. NCSC said that by August, China's leading genomics company, Beijing Genomics Institute, BGI, said it had sold test kits to 180 countries and established labs in 18 countries during the pandemic. NCSC pointed to the U.S. China Economic and Security Review Commission's findings, which stated that the labs had been providing Chinese researchers with access to health care from around the world. Let me get Psalm 64 and 8 again. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. Now, I make no apologies when I say this pandemic was a planned demic, ergo a diligent search, meaning well thought out and strategically planned. And in regular elitist fashion, Esau at the highest level is telling you exactly what he is testing for. Sort of. Now, before I put this lesson together, I went looking for the air date and episode name of the opening clip. Every available resource identified it as The Great Filter, and not reassortment as it is correctly named. You know what we say here, there's no such thing as coincidences. And in keeping with that, through the spirit, I took a look at The Great Filter. I'm not embarrassed to say before seeing this clip, I had no idea such a name or theory even existed. In the interest of time and short attention spans, and because I want you to have a full understanding of what Esau, really those at the top, is attempting to do, I will add a link to the description box I found while researching. It explains the Great Filter, its genesis, and the other theories that surround it in as few words as humanly possible. What I will say, though, is this. I do believe, in keeping with the elite's mandate of the Georgia Guidestones and his historical practice in the tradition of eugenics. I say tradition because he has handed this practice down from generation to generation. The Rockefellers, Carnegies, the Sanger, Gates, all Edomites, all looking for a better way to cull the herd, Salakia, of the peons and the other nations. As strange as it may sound, it's possible Esau is looking for something specifically in your DNA. Those of you who are familiar with the story of Henrietta Lacks will readily agree. And at the same time, he is obviously weeding out those he has deemed undesirable and classified as useless eaters, really those he doesn't want. We know the first on the list, though, are those people that has been promised to another. Again, the target is always you, Hebrew Israelites. So many scriptures come to mind here. The first being Jeremiah 16:4. I had brought that out not too long ago. One of the more seasoned brothers had initially brought this out, or brought this to my attention in one of his lessons, and it escapes me who. Salakia, I apologize. It was obviously a fellow laborer. In any event, it reads, "They shall die of grievous deaths. They shall not be lamented, neither shall they be buried. But they shall be as dung upon the face of the earth, and they shall be consumed by the sword and by famine, and their carcasses shall be meat for the fowls of heaven and for the beasts of the earth." Now the word grievous, Strong's H8463, in the Hebrew is thakalawa, which translates as diseases. There is a specific pestilence that will attack Yasharallah in Jacob's trouble. The Great Filter, in accordance with the Person of Interest episode, not to be confused with the theory or article, although its logistics does play a part, is exactly what that is. For Israelites properly, Yasharallah, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians, meaning you princes of the power, the king being our Heavenly Father, it is Jacob's trouble. For the other nations, it is the Great Tribulation. Truly starting with the Great Reset, this is Esau's rendition of Yahweh's sifting of Israel first. Pursuant to Psalms 49:11, he truly believes that their houses shall continue forever and their dwelling places to all generations, one of the reasons why they call their lands after their own names. So this pandemic, the lockdowns, quarantines, riots, curfews, deaths due to actually taking the vaccine, on top of the insurrections and sedition amongst men, wars, rumors of war, food shortages, famine of the word, i.e. censoring of this truth and basic information going out, earthquakes in diverse places, pestilences, i.e. these man-made diseases being willfully spread, etc., is just the beginning of sorrows. Jacob's trouble is nowhere near its apex. There is much more to come. Let me give you a couple of precepts and we'll close out. Proverbs 18:7 says this: a fool's mouth is his destruction, and his lips are the snare of his soul. And that fool is Esau, starting with the wicked elite. His gentleman's agreement has served as a snare unto his soul, because not only has it sealed his fate, ergo every idle word out of a man's mouth he must account for it, but he has opened the window for the elect men of Israel to prophesy against the wiles of this devil and pinpoint for the world, really the elect of Israel, exactly who he is and what role he plays, especially in these end times. All that see them shall flee away. Knowing his end-time plan is to enslave the masses by mandating the CV-19 vaccine, leading up to the implementation of the RFID microchip, we know that this is the telltale sign of the beast and his system. Pursuant to Revelation, the 13th chapter, the scriptures clearly warn us against. This is Numbers chapter 24, verse 8, and it reads, the Most High brought him forth out of Egypt, the him being the children of Israel, properly Yasharallah, modern-day Egypt, in which the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians serve their bondage, is America. He hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn, and that unicorn strength we identify with today is the internet and the World Wide Web, the tool we've used to teach and spread this truth. He shall eat up the nations, his enemies, and shall break their bones, and pierce them through with his arrows. Going back to Psalm 64:7. This is Matthew chapter 24, verse 21, and it reads, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. This is in reference to the times we are in now and what is getting ready to manifest. And no other time in the history of the earth has these events and the events to come as prophesied ever taken place. Let's close with this. This is Job chapter 5, verse 12, and it reads, he disappointeth the devices of the crafty, so that their hands cannot perform their enterprise. And that enterprise is the New World Order, the order ab chaos, order out of chaos that surrounds it, and the decree on the back of the United States paper dollar. Our enterprise is crowned with success. He taketh the wise in their own craftiness, and the counsel of the froward is carried headlong. This great reset, great filter, self-inflicted tribulation, or whatever it is they're trying to do, will amount to an epic fail, because Yahweh has written it from the beginning. The elect will be protected and saved out of it. Call Allah Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai Ba'Shem Rakakwadash. Through the power and spirit, I hope you are edified. Double honors unto the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who teach us 100% truth and rule well. Salutations to the hopeful elect. Peace and blessings to y'all. Don't take that test, don't take that jab, and damn sure don't take that chip.